Hi everybody, welcome to 2-Page Reviews. This review is for God's Not Dead 2. First one was trash as a film, but as a video sermon, it was awesome. This one is even worse. So let me get to the subplots first. Pastor Dave continues his bromance, and it intensifies to the point where they're probably going to get naked very soon. He also serves on a jury of the nonsense trial that makes up our sermon. Brooke, a student of Grace's, her brother dies, and her parents don't care. There's no resolution to that part of the sermon. Well, it's not important until Brooke actually gets her brother's Bible, and that's kind of the only part that really matters. Amy is from the first film is wondering if she truly believes in God since she's been cured of cancer, or if it's a real belief. That actually makes sense. Brooke can't see Grace and protest on her behalf once the case gets off the ground. So to the opening clip, let me tell you, this academic answer is what got her in trouble.
But what makes nonviolence so radical is its unwavering commitment to a nonviolent approach, not just initially, but in the face of escalating persecution by the opposing force. Yes?
Isn't that sort of like what Jesus meant when he said that we should love our enemies?
Yes. The writer of the Gospel of Matthew records Jesus as saying, "You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you will be children of your Father in heaven," which indicates a commitment to nonviolence. Dr. King confirmed the link, describing his inspiration from Scripture, saying, Christ furnished the spirit and motivation, while Gandhi furnished the method.
Did you see how do you see how this was so objectionable, because she mentioned Jesus in a historical and academic context, and the ACLU would never want to take such a ridiculous case unless they were probably defending her. But the ACLU is evil, so they don't. This whole sermon is predicated on an event that had never taken place, because when you look at the end credits, it shows court cases against Christians that don't even tie into the video sermon. So now let's get to our hero. Grace is a good teacher because her classes are fun, and she's a Christian, and she thinks challenging students can be a blessing. That is true. Challenging students can be a blessing, but I don't really think the writer, aka pastor, has ever taught in taught in a school. And this one is predominantly white anyway. Let's see how you would take that to an inner city school. So the Jesus question is asked, and she's called in. She is asked by the principal, Robin Givens, "Is it true that you talk about Jesus?" "Yes, I did." "Ooh, you in trouble? Let me see. Let me show you how much trouble you in. You could lose everything." Enter Hot Lawyer, who must have dropped out of undergrad. I'll get to that later. Hot Lawyer defends her to the school board, who only wants her to say she's sorry and won't do it again. Now, she does it, and I kind of agree with her, because she didn't do anything wrong. And I agree for reasons that are totally different from this sermon verse. Okay, so not for the enemy who convinces Brooke's parents to file a lawsuit because the ACLU is evil and the money can be used to send Brooke to Stanford, who would likely refuse her application because they don't want to have a student whose parents are litigious bits. But it's because she didn't do anything wrong, and it was a completely academic answer. So Hot Lawyer and Devil Lawyer looks at Hot Lawyer the way Taron Egerton looked at Hugh Jackman, and says, "I hate Christians and God. I'm throwing everything I got at you. I don't care if it's after the know if it's after the first court date, but oh hell, it doesn't matter. Either way, the gauntlet is thrown and taken up, so it's on. First day in court, and all they talk about is preaching in the Constitution." Now, anyone who studied law and has respect for it knows that the constitutional law is not just based on the Constitution itself, because the Constitution is not static. There is precedent and legal doctrine that occurs over time. At one point, Baker versus Nelson was not exactly binding precedent, but that is what a lot of anti-gay lawyers put their opposition to gay marriage laws on. And then Romer versus Evans and Lawrence versus Texas happened, so that kind of weakened Baker versus the Baker case. So basically, that's why Hot Lawyer must have failed out of law school, and somehow got somebody to give him the bar test and pass it anyway. And then, speaking of constitutional rights, let's see what Pat Boone says is a constitutional right.
Unfortunately, in this day and age, people seem to forget that the most basic human right of all is the right to know Jesus.
Basic human right of all, the right to believe.
So back to the case. It veers off into establishing Jesus as a historical figure and the likelihood of the Gospels being true, which have nothing to do with the violation of separation of church and state. Brooke testifies without depositions, by the way, and in this universe, minors can't testify, but an attorney can compel their client to take the stand. He ends up winning by losing, saying, hey, go ahead and convict her because you'll go ahead and make Christians do whatever you want them to do. They refuse, enforcement's at the barrel of a gun. Go ahead. Hence the Christian persecution complex that white evangelicals just can never let go of. So she's found not guilty of preaching, and she wasn't, and now a rant. This would never happen in real life. I mean, I've heard of fiction, but God's Not Dead 1 and 2 are pure fiction. Not one single character other than the hot lawyer I really cared for, and honestly, I just stared at him whenever he was on screen. Is Grace any better off? Did she change in the film? No. She still can't. No. She wasn't any better. Her faith might be strengthened, but what does that look like in the film? She can't even act even when she's supposed to, when she has a crying scene, which looks horrible, and not only that, but there's a tagline at the end of it when she's vindicated. And then, of course, the evil ACLU. One of them could be a Christian in the next in the next film because she says, "Well, you proved the existence of God." And of course, Devil Lawyer looks at her like, I will drag you to hell right now." So this second video sermon was just as bad as the first. Actually, I'd rather watch the first one because it's a college campus and all that, and I see the first one as more likely to happen. At least a person challenging their professor, but not exactly the way that the sermon verse has it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me for 2-page reviews. If there is any film that you like or that you think I should probably watch, put it in the comments and I'll do a 2-page review on that. See you soon. Have a good day.